Minchil is confused about what geopoints are, and Gia stops in her tracks, shocked that she has to explain such a simple concept to a higher life form like him. Gia explains that geopoints are a rating system for how close she was to falling for Minchil a second time. After answering, Gia tells Minchil that he doesn't need to overthink it, he should just act naturally. This makes Gia feel satisfied, and she heads into her room to go to bed, leaving Minchil speechless on the couch. Minchil, still processing everything, starts to intensely study his hand, recalling the moment when they held hands. He questions what his usual self really is. On the other side of the door, Gia leans against it, embarrassed by the speech she just made. She had tried to act tough but couldn't be honest with herself. She realizes she wasn't acting naturally, even though she had told Minchil to. Gia reflects on how Minchil is a fool. If he had pushed a little harder, things might have gotten spicy. Suddenly, Minchil opens the door without knocking, accidentally knocking Gia to the floor. He walks in with a serious expression, explaining that he's thought about it and finally understands what Gia meant by acting like his usual self. He then asks her if she was referring to the thing they do that has the letters X. Gia is confused for a moment until she realizes that Minchil is talking about their intimate moments. She recognizes her mistake in giving him space and decides she needs to regain control of the situation. Naturally, Gia looks away from Minchil and, trying to appear nonchalant, says that he can do whatever he wants. Minchil is confused by Gia's reaction, but Gia decides to just accept it and worry about it later. Minchil then suggests they head to their destination now. Suddenly, they are at the gym, where Gia is squatting and Minchil is cheering her on. Gia realizes that Minchil was referring to exercising all along. Exercise is technically his usual self, so this shouldn't be surprising. However, Gia struggles because she's been slacking off due to work. On their way home, Gia is riding on Minchil's back because she overdid it on leg day. Despite the exhaustion, Gia is happy and doesn't regret dating Minchil. The next day, Suan is walking down the street, enjoying a choco taco, when she sees Senyu with another woman clinging to his arm. Suan freezes at the sight, and a panic attack hits her so hard that she drops her choco taco. Later, Suan is in the car with Sangyu and her suspicions grow as she notices his strange behavior. She feels like Sangyu has been watching her closely and he's been hiding his phone for some reason. Suan casually asks Sangyu about his dinner plans, and he tells her he already has plans with someone to whom he is indebted. Suan's mind flashes back to the mysterious woman she saw earlier. Irritated, she throws her contaminated choco taco into the trash. Suddenly, Suan and the woman make eye contact, and Suan tries to hide to avoid being noticed. However, the woman seems oblivious, as she doesn't react and just keeps walking. What bothers Suan more is how close the two seem, and she begins to wonder if they're old friends. Her heart sinks at the thought, and she desperately hopes they're just friends. Suan can't shake the fear that Sangyu might be the kind of person who would cheat on her. Suan rushes down the road to catch up, seeing Sangyu and the woman walking together. Sangyu thanks the woman for her help and refers to her as his sister, so Suan assumes she must be one of his 3 sisters. However, the woman reminds Sangyu that her time isn't free, and she recalls that he promised to take care of her today. Sangyu bows to her and asks where they should go next, flattering the woman. Now, they're at a restaurant, and Suan, who just happened to stumble upon them, is close by, spying on their interaction. The woman repeatedly asks Sangyu how the food is, insisting that it's yummy, but Sangyu is struggling with the spiciness, drinking water to cope. The woman laughs and teases him, saying he's still a child. Sangyu thinks she might be drunk, but he's never seen her act this way before. She then brings up an embarrassing memory of Sangyu passing out without his pants on in the street. As she aggressively wipes his face, Suan feels uncomfortable and decides to leave. The woman hadn't intended for Suan to flee. She wanted Suan to confront her. However, Suan didn't. Instead, she walks away, frustrated. Sangyut had told her he was with a friend, but this woman clearly wasn't just a friend. They seemed too close. Suan starts to wonder if Sangyut has been lying to her about his love all along. However, she slaps her cheeks and decides not to jump to conclusions until she knows what's really going on. First, though, she needs to eat. While eating macarons, Suan suddenly notices Sangyu and the woman again. They seem to be everywhere she goes. Suan begins to suspect that the woman is somehow predicting her movements. Soon the woman enters a bathroom, and Suan, determined, waits for her outside. When the woman emerges, Suan confronts her, demanding that she say whatever it is she wants to say instead of following her around all day. The woman, smiling, stands there confused. Suan continues accusing her of following her, but the woman only seems more puzzled. The woman asks Suan if they've met at a wedding or birthday, explaining that she struggles to remember faces. Suan confirms that this is their first time meeting. Then the woman suddenly realizes that this must be because of Sangyu. Suan, confused, asks how she knows him. The woman reveals that they used to eat together every day and even slept under the same roof. Suan is shocked, and the woman casually asks how Suan knows Sangyu. Looking at the ground, Suan replies that Sangyu is just a work colleague. The woman accepts this and asks how Sangyu is adapting to his job, but Suan ignores the question and instead boldly declares that she is Sangyu's girlfriend. The woman is astonished. They then meet up with Sangyu, who is annoyed that the woman would mess with Suan like that. The woman, however, was just having fun but still apologizes to Suan. The woman introduces herself as Sangyu's oldest sister, Yenji Choi. Suan, still processing everything, introduces herself as well. Yenji, pondering the situation, smiles and says that Suan is her sister-in-law. Suan is taken aback, but Yenji asks if it's okay to call her that since she's her brother's girlfriend. Suan hesitantly agrees. Yenji says she has many questions for Suan, but that's for another day, and she leaves. Suan bows respectfully, while Sangyu jokingly flips his sister off as she walks away. Now Suan and Sangyu are walking together. Sangyu apologizes, explaining that his sisters always mess with him. Suan smiles and says she understands, but Sangyu is confused about why Suan is here at all, since she was supposed to be working from home today. Suan lies, saying she needed to buy something and just happened to bump into Yenji by chance. Sangyu, sensing something, changes the topic and explains that he needed his sister's help with something. He then apologizes again. Suan thinks it's about Yenji's behavior, but Sangyu seems to be apologizing for something else. He's been hesitating to tell her something important and is unsure if now is the right time. Suan feels a wave of dread wash over her, unsure of what he's about to say, leaving her devastated. Suan immediately assumes the worst and through tears thanks Sangyu for everything. They've been dating for only a few weeks, and although she's been happy, she thinks it hasn't worked out. As she begins crying, Sangyu stops her. Suan, desperate for answers, asks if he's been avoiding her. Sangyu reassures her that he hasn't. Gathering his courage, Sangyu presents Suan with a jewelry box, a symbol of their relationship. Suan is shocked as Sangyu asks if she'll accept it. It's implied that she does, solidifying their bond. Meanwhile, back with Gia and Minchkil, they've just returned from the gym. Minchkil notes how hard Gia worked and says he wants to reward her. However, the reward turns out to be a surprise. He jokingly tases Gia. The joke is based on a Korean pun where the symbols for reward and fatal wound are similar. Suddenly, Gia wakes up from this strange dream, wondering why she always dreams weird things after leg day. As she walks, she's in immense pain. It's been a while since she last worked out, and Minchil really pushed her hard yesterday. This is definitely going to affect her work. Just then, Minchil appears in front of her, fresh from the shower with wet hair and no glasses. Gia is taken aback by how good-looking he is, wondering if Minchil has always been this handsome. Minchil, confused by Gia's reaction, continues making his chicken breast smoothie and casually asks if she wants protein powder. Gia declines, opting for the regular chicken breast smoothie. As she watches Minchil, Gia has a sudden realization. He has always been handsome, especially without his glasses. Her mind drifts back to their childhood when they were in elementary school. Gia remembers that Minchil was already good-looking back then. She even applied makeup to him once as a kid, making him even more striking. Minchil, seeing Gia's expression change, assumes she wants some protein powder after all. but she shakes her head and chugs her chicken breast smoothie, lost in thought. After they were done with the makeup, Minchiel washed it off, and Gia felt a little bad, even though it was just practice for the talent show. Later, when Minchiel left the bathroom, Gia apologized, telling him not to be mad. But Minchiel wasn't mad at all. Gia kept apologizing and explained that it was her first time seeing him without glasses, and he was cuter than she expected, which is why she couldn't help herself. Minchiel, however, took offense and told her not to call him cute since he's a guy. She should call him handsome instead. He added that even his own family thought he looked cute without glasses, which bothered him. Gia found this amusing and teased him, saying that his big eyes and long eyelashes were why people thought he was cute, but that he looked more manly with his glasses on. Minchiel, feeling a bit self-conscious, asked if that was really true. Gia laughed and admitted that it wasn't. In the present, Gia realizes that their interaction back then was more significant than she had thought. She asks Minchiel if he wears his glasses to look cool. Minchiel, puzzled, asks why she's suddenly bringing this up. Gia points out that he's been wearing the same glasses since they were little. Minchiel explains that he wears them because they're comfortable and practical, especially since he spends all day staring at a computer. The large lenses reduce eye strain, and he even has anti-blue light lenses for extra protection. Gia feels a bit disappointed that her comment back then didn't have a life-changing impact on Minchiel. Later, as they part ways to go to work, Minchiel recalls the same scene from their childhood, the one Gia had been thinking about. He smiles to himself, indicating that he still wears his glasses, partly to look manly, though it's more for comfort now. As Gia walks away, she still wishes Minchiel wouldn't wear glasses all the time. Nari, noticing that Gia is deep in thought, asks her what's wrong. Just then, Gia spots something that surprises her. Nari is reading one of her books. Gia remembers the day she published her first book, when she had appeared at a bookstore to buy a copy herself, only to find that everyone there was also buying her book. After Gia had run home celebrating her accomplishment, the bag she was carrying ripped, sending her books flying everywhere. Now, back in the present, Gia is puzzled as to why Nari is reading her book. She wonders if it's even still on sale, thinking it must just be a coincidence. But despite the years that have passed, seeing someone read her book still makes her feel embarrassed. Nervously, she asks Nari what she thinks of it. Nari, startled by Gia's anxious expression, bluntly responds, "The book sucks." Gia is shocked. Nari continues, saying it's cringe and reads like a teenager wrote it, but also admits that it's a fun read. Gia blushes, a mix of embarrassment and pride, and asks why Nari is reading it in the first place. Nari explains that she's reading it for a book report, leaving Gia confused. Nari elaborates that it's part of the cafe's best perk. The boss handpicks a book every Monday and puts it on a bulletin board. If someone writes a report about it and turns it in, they get 1,000,001. Gia is stunned. Nari continues, explaining that if you submit a report every week for a year, the boss will even pay for a vacation. Gia wonders why Yandu would offer such a benefit, but Nari explains it helps the boss with her own writing and encourages people to read her favorite works. The report only has to be 500 words, excluding spaces, so Nari sees it as an easy way to earn 1,000,000 extra per month. Still skeptical, G asks if this is some kind of April Fool's joke, but Nari insists it's true, adding that the boss will even buy the books for you. Later, after work, Gia and Minchiel are walking home together. Minchiel notices her sour expression and asks if something happened at work. Gia asks him, "If you could earn 1,000,001 for writing a book report, would you do it?" Minchi immediately thinks it sounds like a scam. Gia assures him it's not. Minchi does the math and points out that it's 201 won per word, which is tempting but warns Gia to be cautious because it could still be some kind of pyramid scheme. Hearing this makes Gia feel a bit foolish. When Gia gets home, frustrated, she kicks Minchi, then picks up her book, feeling conflicted. The idea of writing the report is too tempting to pass up, even though she had promised Yandu she wouldn't write anymore. Gia feels guilty but rationalizes it by telling herself it's just a report. Her inner voices argue, with one of her former selves pointing out that writing a report is still right. Gia silences that thought, thinking that if Yandu gets mad, she'll just apologize later. Gia quickly finishes the report and sends it off. Moments later, she receives the promised one, 000000001. She rushes out to show Minchil, eager to prove it's not a scam, but he remains skeptical, still convinced it might be some sort of pyramid scheme. Meanwhile, Yandu and Yandu are drinking wine. Yandu is surprised that Yandu managed to get Gia to write again. Yandu notes that a book report isn't exactly writing, but Yandu counters by saying she never specified what kind of writing she wanted Gia to do. Regardless, Yandu is impressed by how Gia's report still reflects her distinctive style, casual and engaging. He's also surprised Yandu accomplished this with only 1,000,001, but Yandu explains it wasn't the money that motivated Gia. Yandu created an environment where Gia felt comfortable, a space where she could set her own rules and rediscover her passion for writing without pressure. She believes this will gradually integrate writing back into Gia's daily life. Yandu remarks that Yandu must have spent a lot of time planning this out, but instead of responding directly, Yandu asks him if Gia's writing makes him happy. Yandu admits that Gia's writing is uniquely funny, but points out that the one who enjoys Gia's work the most is Yandu herself. Yandu suspects that Yandu has been subtly influencing Gia's life all along, but Yandu brushes it off, telling him it's none of his concern. She then reminds him that it's time to settle their bet. The wager was that if Yandu could get Gia to write, Yandu would have to drink anything she gave him. Yandu tries to deny this, but when Yandu threatens to cancel her book deal, he immediately agrees. Before Yandu starts drinking, he nervously asks Yandu if she's sure this is okay, reminding her that if he messes up, it'll be her fault. Yandu dismisses his concerns and orders him to drink. Yandu chugs his glass of wine, and Yandu applauds his effort. She then hands him some snacks, which at first seem like a relief, until Yandu notices they are an assortment of strange, unfamiliar items. Yandu refills his wine glass, telling him he has to keep drinking, and warns him that if he falls asleep before she does, he'll have to repeat this again. 3 hours later, Yandu finally passes out, having lasted much longer than expected. Yandu, amused, leans in toward him, gently touching his hair and adjusting his face. She gets closer to his lips, almost as if she's about to kiss him, but they're suddenly interrupted by the phone ringing. Yandu answers, and the voice on the other end instantly recognizes her. It's Yandu's son, suggesting that something significant happened between Yandu and Yandu in the past. Meanwhile, back with Minchil and Gia is cursing him out while he flexes triumphantly. To understand how this situation came about, we must go back an hour. After Gia received the money from the book report, Minchil was impressed by her work benefits. Minchil, in typical fashion, was immersed in a popular fighting game, riding a 3-game winning streak. Gia, watching him play, admired his skills but also noticed that despite dating for 2 weeks and being happy together, their relationship hadn't really changed. Minchil was still always gaming. While Gia didn't expect him to be overly romantic, she wished they could act a little more like a couple. That's when Gia got an idea. She challenged Minchil to a match in the game he was playing. They were now sitting on the sofa, Minchil in full gamer posture, ready to dominate. This was exactly the kind of playful interaction their relationship needed. They agreed that the loser would have to do whatever the winner wanted. All Gia needed to do was beat Minchil 1 time. But that was proving to be harder than expected. This plan is brilliant, and no matter what happens, it's sure to create a fun, light-hearted atmosphere for their relationship. The idea seems flawless. However, when Minchil says that if he wins, they'll go jogging, Gia thinks he's joking. They already exercise plenty, and she was hoping for something more romantic. But Minchil never jokes about exercise, and Gia realizes her plan to spice up their relationship might backfire if she loses. The game begins, and it's intense. Gia expected Minchil to go easy on her, but he's more focused than ever, not holding back. She's close to winning the round, but out of nowhere, Minchil one-shots her. Frustrated, Gia curses him out, and Minxiel rubs it in by emoting on her victory screen. Gia is devastated, but Minxiel tells her not to feel bad, saying he has a massive advantage due to his experience. Gia, however, refuses to accept defeat, especially after losing 10 games in a row. Minxiel suggests they stop for the night, saying they both have work tomorrow and offering to count her close wins as victories. But Gia is determined, and she insists on playing one more game, warning Minxiel that she'll know if he loses on purpose. It's now 3:46 a.m., and Gia has still lost every match. Despite Minxiel looking visibly exhausted, Gia demands one more round. She's discovered a strategy: to level the playing field. Gia decides to sit on Minxiel's lap while they play. Minxiel is confused and asks how he's supposed to see the screen, but that's the point. He can't. The match begins and Gia's plan is finally paying off. She's winning. Suddenly, Minxiel picks Gia up by her legs, flipping her upside down. The odds shift back in his favor, but Gia fights back by pinching him. After a chaotic, hard-fought battle, Gia manages to win, locking Minxiel in an armbar as she celebrates her victory. She eagerly asks how it feels to lose to his rookie wife in a fighting game. Minxiel, utterly devastated, begs for one more rematch, but Gia refuses, playfully saying she doesn't waste time fighting weaklings. Minxiel admits defeat, acknowledging that if Gia went to such lengths to win, she must have something she really wants him to do. However, Gia suddenly forgets what she intended to ask. Just then, a small devil version of Gia appears, encouraging her to take this chance to leave a lasting impression on Minxiel. But before the devil Gia can convince her, an angelic version of Gia steps in, suggesting they engage in something more innocent. Embarrassed, Gia crushes the angel Gia's argument. At that moment, Minxiel calls out to her, suggesting that they should sleep soon. Gia, however, knows that this is an opportunity she might never get again. She quickly tells Minxiel to meet her at the park entrance on Saturday at noon, warning him that he'll be slapped once for every second he's late. As Gia waits at the park, the devil and angel versions of herself debate whether she should have gone further, but Gia is still too shy to take it to the next level. It's almost noon, and Minxiel still hasn't arrived, despite leaving the house an hour ago. Gia starts to wonder if he went to the gym, but she can't believe he would skip this special day for that. Just as her impatience is about to peak, she hears her name from a distance. She turns and is shocked to see Minxiel, looking incredibly handsome in fashionable clothes and without his glasses. Gia is taken aback by how good he looks and compliments his outfit, surprised that he knows how to dress so well. Minxiel in turn compliments her, saying she looks pretty. Gia's heart races and she brushes off the compliment, trying to stay calm. They head to a renowned sushi restaurant where Minxiel has made a reservation, and Gia wonders if this is really the same Minxiel. But as their day unfolds, the stylish appearance fades into a more relaxed vibe as they enjoy a light workout together to digest the sushi, which turns out to be just bowling. Gia is having fun, surprised by how much she's enjoying herself. She realizes that despite their different hobbies, she and Minxiel have always had fun together, even as kids. Maybe they aren't so different after all. After bowling, Minxiel's behavior takes a surprising turn. He becomes unusually considerate, taking her shopping, watching a movie, and even risking his gains by drinking beer at a bar. This shift in his behavior feels out of the ordinary, as Minxiel has always tried his best at everything he does. Seeing his efforts makes Gia happy, and she gives him 100 points for the date. It could have been higher, though. Minxiel humbly claims he hasn't done anything special, but when Gia suggests they drink beer like this every night, Minxiel realizes he's been checkmated. As the night goes on, Gia asks how far Minxiel intends to take their date, but they end up sitting in awkward silence for 5 minutes, not using their phones. Gia starts to panic, and her devilish side thinks she should go all the way to secure Minxiel. Her angelic side agrees with the devil, as today feels like the perfect opportunity, and she may not get another chance. Nervously, Gia breaks the silence, asking how far Minxiel plans to take it. Minxiel confidently replies that he's going to take it all the way. What a Chad. Mincheal grabs Gia's hand and repeatedly asks how far she plans to take it. Just as their romantic moment intensifies, they are interrupted by a misunderstanding with Sue, who mistakes Mincheal for someone trying to hit on Gia. Nari had warned him not to, but Mincheal didn't listen. Sue then asks if Gia and Mincheal are on a date, and Gia quickly lies, claiming they're just on a walk. Nari and SIU avoid answering when Gia asks them the same question. Eventually they all leave, and Mincheal apologizes for being too pushy at the bar. But this is exactly what Gia wanted, and she loved the day. Still, there's one problem. Gia doesn't like how Mincheal is trying to be someone he isn't. Taking this into account, Gia reduces her score for the date to 98 points because Minch apologized earlier and she prefers confidence. Mincheal takes this personally and surprises Gia by hugging her as she walks away, trying to make up for the lost points. But Gia avoids the situation by claiming she's feeling hot, attributing it to her heart racing. Mincheal apologizes, thinking she's referring to the temperature, but Gia doesn't like this and tells him to stop apologizing. Suddenly, Gia pulls Mincheal in and kisses him. She does this as an example of what Mincheal should be doing, because showing affection for each other is normal for couples. Her point is that it's okay for Mincheal to make mistakes, and he doesn't need to apologize for something that isn't wrong. Mincheal, moved by her words, suddenly kisses her back before they go home. Mincheal wants to stop at the convenience store on the way back, and while Gia waits outside, she thinks about what he might be getting. Could it be something starting with CON? Maybe he's picking up hangover medicine, but she doubts it. Her mind runs wild, and she starts to think the only reasonable conclusion is that Mincheal is preparing for something spicy. While Gia waits outside, someone recognizes her. It's Gang Yu Jo, a tall, well-liked guy she met when she was a sophomore in college. He used to cover her with his jacket, and they always got along. 10 years after college, they run into each other again at the convenience store. They exchange friendly greetings, but Mincheal suddenly appears and apprehends Gang Yu, thinking he's trying to pick up Gia. Gia quickly diffuses the situation before Mincheal can break Gang Yu's arm and introduces Mincheal as her husband. As they leave, Gang Yu suggests that they should all meet up again, because other college friends are worried about Gia. Gia and Mitya are now in a taxi on the way home, and Gia explains that Gang Yu is just someone she knew in college. But there's more to it than that. Something traumatic happened between them back in college. Meanwhile, Gang Yu arrives home and tells someone named Jisoo Hoo-Gia, who also knew Gia in college, that he ran into her today. Jisoo is shocked by the news.